For humanity's rebellion, the sentence wasn't death. It was something far, far crueler, banishment, when the last of humankind was cast out, abandoned on a planet named Xyos. The Galactic Council didn't even bother to mark the grave. After all, Xyos was the most infamous Deathworld in the known galaxy. Nothing could survive on a planet where the rain was acid, the plants were carnivores, and the top predators literally hunted by shattering tectonic plates. 500 years went by. Humanity became a forgotten footnote, a scary story you'd tell misbehaving children, until a stray survey probe, knocked way off course by a solar flare, punched through the toxic atmosphere of Xylos, and found a paradise. The verdict from the Galactic Compact was unanimous. It was cold, logical, and delivered by beings who measured their lives in millennia. Humanity, they had decided, was a problem. Not a galaxy-ending threat, not yet anyway, but a chaotic variable in their perfectly balanced galactic peace. Humans were just too ambitious, too adaptable. Their technology grew at a speed that just didn't make sense. Other species took 20,000 years to get from blacksmithing to basic spaceships. Humanity did it in a tiny fraction of that, always pushed by some relentless fire inside them. On paper, they looked fragile. The official charts gave them a laughable 3 out of 20 on physical resilience, needing a very specific, almost delicate mix of gases just to breathe. But that weakness was a lie. It hid a terrifying resourcefulness. Humans argued, they fought, they broke into factions, but if you pushed them into a corner, they'd unite with a ferocity that could make ancient empires tremble. In the fancy words of one diplomat, they were a biological event just waiting to happen. Killing them would only create martyrs. Trying to contain them had already failed. So the Compact chose something they felt was more poetic. Erasure. They would send humanity to a place no one ever comes back from. The planet they chose was Xylos, officially a Class 15 Deathworld. That classification was basically a rubber stamp on a tomb. The whole system was drenched in hard radiation from 2 unstable suns. The gravity was a crushing 1.8 times standard, heavy enough to put constant, grinding stress on the bones of most species. The air was a toxic soup of chlorine and methane, and the weather was the stuff of legends. It rained low-grade acid that could peel flesh from bone. The electrical storms generated their own EMPs, powerful enough to fry any tech that wasn't heavily shielded, and then there was the wildlife. The plants were silicon-based, and all of them were predators. Thickets of razor vine could shred an armored truck. Spore fungi puffed out neurotoxins that made you go paranoid until your heart gave out. The animals were even worse. The apex predators were nightmares made real, colossal beasts that used seismic vibrations to hunt. Treating the planet's crust like the skin of a drum, the Compact towed the last of the human generation ships into high orbit, a fleet of refugees and rebels, and just pushed them into a decaying orbit. They watched the first few pods burn up on entry, confident their math was right. No species could survive down there. No civilization could ever rise from that hell. The Compact officially recorded the extinction of Homo sapiens, slapped a permanent forbidden label on the Xylos system, and moved on. For 500 years, they thought they were right. The Kaha survey probe Wanderer 7 was an old clunker, a relic from a past age of exploration, now stuck with the boring job of mapping gravitational weirdness in forgotten parts of space. It was a simple, automated machine. So when a massive solar flare knocked it miles off its course, nobody important even noticed for 3 whole days. By the time a junior technician named Unit 90 for B finally flagged the problem, the probe was already falling into the gravity well of Xylos. The system name flashed bright red on the console. Forbidden. Extinction level biohazard. Class 15. The manual was clear, self-destruct. But the same flare that knocked it off course had also fried that specific command. So, bound by its primary mission to observe and report, the Wanderer 7 did the only thing it knew how to do. It started its landing sequence. Unit 90 for B and its supervisor, a grizzled Zillenar named Vel, watched the incoming data with a grim fascination. They made little bets on how long the probe would last. Vel said 3 seconds after hitting the atmosphere. 90 for B, ever the optimist, guessed 5. They were both dead wrong. The first strange reading came in immediately. The upper atmosphere, which the archives swore was a corrosive nightmare, was thinner. The chlorine concentration was down by over 60%. The probe's hull temperature, which should have been spiking from acid rain, stayed perfectly normal. Atmospheric sensor broken? Vel sent in a message, his mandibles clicking in confusion. All sensors are green, 94B shot back. The data, it doesn't match the history files. The probe dropped lower, passing through the cloud layer that was supposed to be thick with lung-melting spores. Instead, the samplers picked up mostly nitrogen and oxygen. And below the clouds, the impossible became undeniable. The world was green. Not the sickly, predatory green of silicon-based killers, but the vibrant, living green of photosynthesis. The probe landed softly in a valley. The history logs showed a wasteland of shattered rock and fused sand. The probe's cameras showed cultivated fields stretching to the horizon. What should have been thickets of razor vine were now planted in neat, organized rows, their flesh-tearing limbs pruned back and growing along huge trellises. Massive, precision-carved irrigation channels diverted water from rivers that were now running crystal clear. Vel and 94B just stared at their screens. They zoomed in. The crops. They were the native plants. The carnivorous pitcher blooms, which were once big enough to swallow a small vehicle, were being farmed. Humans in simple protective gear were harvesting the plant's digestive fluids and using them to break down rocks into fresh soil. They're farming it, Vel whispered. They are using the deadliest things on the planet as farm tools, following a paved road, a road that shouldn't exist. The probe flew over a vast plain. In the distance, something enormous was moving. The database it as a juggernaut, a colossal six-legged beast that hunted by creating localized earthquakes. A planetary-level threat. But this juggernaut wasn't hunting. It was strapped into a massive harness made of some strange, shimmering metal. It was pulling a plow the size of a battleship, carving a new riverbed into the earth. And on its back, tiny figures humans were guiding it with some kind of focused sound device. They had domesticated the tectonic hunters. They had turned a walking geological disaster into a beast of burden. The probe followed the new river to a settlement. But it wasn't a crude camp of mud huts or caves. It was a city built directly into the canyon walls, its buildings spiraling up towards the sky. They were made from the iridescent shells of giant insects, reinforced with the petrified wood of the old killer forests. Glowing lines of energy pulsed through the city, powered by geothermal taps sunk deep into the planet's volcanic heart. They had harnessed the planet itself for power. For hours, the probe sent back a flood of impossible images. It saw humans using the paralyzing venom of local spider creatures as a local anesthetic in medical clinics. It saw children laughing as they rode on the backs of smaller predators the Compact had sworn were untamable. They hadn't just survived. They had mastered this place. They had taken a planet designed as a galactic execution chamber and reverse-engineered it to their will. They hadn't just found a foothold. They had conquered the whole damn mountain. Shaking, Vel escalated the report. The data stream from humanity's forgotten tomb shot across the galactic networks, and pure undiluted panic erupted in the halls of the Galactic Compact. The species they had thrown away, the fragile apes they had sentenced to extinction, hadn't died. They had adapted. They had evolved. They had thrived. The emergency session of the Galactic Compact was pure chaos. Representatives from 100 worlds chittered and buzzed in a symphony of fear and disbelief. The footage from Xyos played on a loop, a silent, damning video of their spectacular miscalculation. They had feared humanity's unpredictability, but had completely missed their most terrifying trait, their resilience. A decision was made. A first contact protocol that hadn't been used in 1,000 years was dusted off and activated. A sleek, silver diplomacy drone was dispatched from the Wanderer 7. It was designed to be as elegant and non-threatening as possible. Its only job to announce the Compact's presence and open a line of communication. The drone descended gracefully into the central plaza of the human city, a place they called Sanctuary. The air was filled with the sounds of life, of work, of conversation, of laughter. Humans stopped what they were doing and watched it land. There was no panic. No one screamed or ran for weapons. The feeling that rippled through the crowd was something the Compact hadn't seen in the old records, just a calm, steady curiosity.
A man stepped forward from the crowd. His skin was tan from the light of 2 suns. His muscles dense from a life in high gravity. He wore armor made from overlapping scales, but he moved with an easy grace. He wasn't carrying a weapon, but some kind of complex tool that hummed with low power. He walked a slow circle around the drone, his eyes appraising its design. The drone's speaker crackled to life, broadcasting the standard greeting in the last known dialect of Old Earth speak. We come in peace. We are representatives of the Galactic Compact. The man stopped. He looked at the drone, then glanced up at the sky, as if just now noticing the ship in orbit. A slow, easy smile spread across his face. He gestured to the city around them, to the tamed monsters working the fields, to the clear rivers and the engineered sky. He spoke, his voice deep and resonant. The drone's translation software, working with 500-year-old data, word for a second before finding the meaning. Peace? The man asked, with a hint of genuine amusement. He tapped the humming tool against his palm. We haven't had much time for that. We've been busy. He then looked directly into the drone's camera, his gaze sharp, ancient, and completely without fear. His smile widened, and he spoke the words that would shatter the foundations of galactic power. Welcome to paradise, he said. Try not to break anything. Billions of miles away, Vel stared at his monitor, his mind finally grasping the awful truth. The drone's final log entry was a single sentence of pure, existential terror. This wasn't a colony of survivors. This was a civilization of masters. The galaxy hadn't made a graveyard. It had forged a cradle for gods. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories from the worlds of HFY and science fiction. It really does help the channel grow, and it lets me bring more of these tales to you. We also have a Patreon where you can get early access to scripts like this one, see some behind-the-scenes stuff, and even vote on what stories I tell next. The link for that is down in the description. We've also got a merch store with some exclusive designs if you want to check that out. Every bit of support truly means the world. Until next time, stay curious.